They called us dangerous, unpredictable, too ambitious for their fragile order. So they forced us out, cast humanity into the stars like unwanted debris. 12 species stood in judgment, convinced they'd rid themselves of a threat. We warned them. Exile didn't break us. It transformed us. Now, as an ancient terror devours their worlds and their cries echo into the void, it is not mercy we bring. It is consequence. The forced departure. The massive crystalline chamber floated in the void of space, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the galaxy's core. Inside, representatives from 12 alien species sat in tiered circles around a central platform. The air shimmered with translation fields as dozens of languages were converted into comprehensible speech. This was the Galactic Trade Council, the governing body that had maintained peace and prosperity across known space for over 3 centuries. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her dark blue uniform crisp and professional despite the long journey from Earth. Her hands remained steady at her sides, though her heart raced as she faced the assembled representatives. Behind her, Dr. Marcus Webb adjusted his tablet nervously, double-checking the colony population figures they had prepared for what they thought would be a routine administrative meeting. Ambassador Krelthak of the Zerani Empire rose from his elevated seat, his reptilian features cold and calculating. The Zerani had been the dominant force in galactic politics for generations, their technological superiority and vast resources making them natural leaders. When Krelthak spoke, others listened. The motion before this council is clear, Krelthak announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to obedience. Humanity has overstepped its bounds. In the 50 years since first contact, they have established colonies on 47 worlds, extracted resources from dozens of systems, and expanded at a rate that threatens the established order. Sarah stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over despite her growing unease. Ambassador Krelthak, with respect, every human colony was established on uninhabited worlds. We followed all protocols, paid all fees, and contributed to galactic trade networks. Our expansion rate is well within the guidelines established for developing species. A series of clicks and whistles came from the Zephyrian delegation, translated moments later as sharp laughter. Representative Quill, whose species resembled a cross between a mantis and a bird, gestured with one of her 4 arms. Contributed to trade networks? You mean undercut established prices and disrupted century-old agreements? Human agricultural worlds produce food at costs that make traditional farming unprofitable. Your mining operations extract minerals faster than older, more established companies. Dr. Webb found his voice, stepping slightly forward. Our agricultural techniques and mining efficiency are the result of human innovation and hard work. We're not breaking any laws by being successful. Success, mused Counselor Vex of the Morphic Collective, his gelatinous form shifting colors as he spoke. An interesting word choice. When one species' success threatens the livelihood of others, when does innovation become invasion? Sarah felt the weight of the chamber's attention pressing down on her. Around the tiers, alien faces showed expressions she was learning to recognize despite their vast differences from human features. Anger, fear, resentment, and something else. A cold determination that made her stomach clench. From the highest tier, a gravelly voice spoke with the weight of centuries. Elder Voss of the Corvani Collective rarely participated in council debates, his ancient species preferring observation to action. When he did speak, his words carried profound weight. This council makes a grave error, Elder Voss said, his rocky features appearing carved from mountain stone. I have witnessed the rise and fall of 17 civilizations in my lifetime. I have seen what happens when potential allies are cast into darkness out of fear and jealousy. Krelthak's scales rippled with irritation. Elder Voss, your species has remained neutral in galactic affairs for millennia. Perhaps it would be better to continue that tradition rather than interfere in matters of galactic security. Security? Elder Voss's laugh rumbled like an avalanche. You fear human success, not human aggression. You see a young species adapting faster than you thought possible, and it terrifies you. Representative Thana of the Celestial Dominion spoke next, her voice like singing crystal. The humans show dangerous tendencies. They refuse to accept established hierarchies. They question regulations that have maintained peace for centuries. They innovate without proper oversight. Sarah's diplomatic composure finally cracked. You're punishing us for being different, for not conforming to your expectations of how a species should develop. We are protecting galactic civilization, Krelthak replied coldly. The vote has already been decided in preliminary sessions. We gather here merely to formalize the decision and provide you with the terms. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. What vote? What decision? Krelthak gestured to an aide who activated a holographic display showing the voting results. 11 species had voted in favor of the motion, only the Corvani had abstained. The decision was overwhelming and final. Humanity is hereby expelled from all worlds within established galactic boundaries, Krelthak announced. You have 6 standard months to evacuate all human colonies, stations, and vessels from Council space. Any human presence detected after that deadline will be considered an act of aggression and dealt with accordingly. Dr. Webb's tablet slipped from nerveless fingers, clattering on the chamber floor. 4.2 million people, he whispered. You're talking about displacing 4.2 million human beings. The logistics of your exodus are not our concern, replied Counselor Vex. You established those colonies. You can relocate their populations. Sarah found her voice again, though it trembled with controlled fury. And where exactly are we supposed to go? You're claiming jurisdiction over every habitable world in known space. The void regions beyond the galactic rim remain unexplored, Krelthak said with casual indifference. Surely a species as innovative as humanity claims to be can find somewhere to establish itself. Elder Voss stood slowly, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. You condemn them to the Void Nebula. That region has claimed every expedition sent to explore it. The radiation storms alone would kill most known species. Then perhaps they will adapt, Quill clicked dismissively. Natural selection in action. The callousness of the statement hung in the air like a poison cloud. Sarah realized she was witnessing not just political maneuvering, but species-level ethnic cleansing disguised as administrative procedure. This is genocide, she said quietly. This is preservation of galactic order, Krelthak corrected. Your species will survive, or it will not. That is no longer our concern. Elder Voss approached the central platform, his footsteps echoing like thunder. Captain Chen, you should know that some of us recognize the injustice being done here. The Corvani archives contain records of similar decisions made in the distant past. Without exception, they have led to consequences that the decision-makers never anticipated. Enough, Krelthak snapped. The decision is final. Human representatives, you have received your terms. We suggest you begin evacuation procedures immediately. 6 months is not a long time to relocate an entire species. As the council session ended and alien delegates began filing out, Elder Voss lingered near the platform. Captain Chen, he said quietly, my people have a saying. When you cast stones into the abyss, you must be prepared for what the abyss casts back. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means that forcing someone into the darkness doesn't make them disappear. It changes them. And you rarely like what they become. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the colony ship New Hope, watching as the last human transport lifted off from the agricultural world of Kepler 442b. Below, vast fields of genetically enhanced crops swayed in alien winds, crops that would feed billions across the galaxy. Soon, those fields would belong to someone else. Dr. Webb joined her at the viewport, his 10-year-old daughter Zara pressed against his side. The girl had been born on Kepler 442b and had never seen Earth. This was the only home she had ever known. The evacuation is proceeding ahead of schedule, Webb reported. Most colonies will be cleared within 4 months. The Titan industrial platform will be the last to evacuate. They need time to safely shut down the fusion reactors. Sarah nodded absently, her mind focused on larger problems. Marcus, I need you to be honest with me. What are our chances of survival in the Void Nebula? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Conventional science says 0. The radiation levels, the gravitational anomalies, the energy storms, it should be uninhabitable for any known form of life. But we're not conventional anymore, are we? 50 years of adapting to alien environments, of solving impossible problems with limited resources. If any species could survive in the void, it might be us. Zara looked up at the adults with wide, curious eyes. Daddy, why do the aliens want us to leave? Webb knelt down to his daughter's level. Because they're afraid of what we might become if we stay. What will we become if we go? Webb glanced at Sarah, then back at his daughter. I don't know, sweetheart. Something they're not expecting. The convoy of human ships stretched across space like a river of lights. 5,000 vessels of every size and configuration, from massive colony transports to tiny personal shuttles. They carried the dreams and desperation of an entire species, heading toward a region of space that appeared on navigation charts as simply void, unexplored. As the fleet prepared to enter the nebula's outer edge, Captain Sarah Chen sent one final transmission back toward galactic civilization. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Exodus Fleet. We go now into the unknown, not by choice but by force. History will remember this day, and it will judge who was truly civilized and who was not. To those who cast us out, you have made your choice. Now live with the consequences. The transmission ended, and humanity disappeared into the swirling chaos of the Void Nebula. Behind them, the galaxy continued its orderly existence, confident that it had solved the problem of human unpredictability. They had no idea what they had just created. 8 years would pass before the galaxy heard from humanity again. 8 years of silence that would end with signals that would change everything. The aliens had wanted humanity gone, and they had gotten their wish, but they had forgotten that survival has a way of transforming the survivor into something entirely new. Something that their comfortable, ordered galaxy was utterly unprepared to face. The transformation. 8 years had passed since humanity entered the Void Nebula, and the species that emerged from that cosmic crucible bore little resemblance to the refugees who had been cast out by the Galactic Council. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, flagship of what was now called the Void Fleet. Her once dark hair had taken on silver streaks that seemed to move with their own inner light, a side effect of prolonged exposure to the nebula's exotic radiation. Her eyes, once brown, now held flecks of deep blue that pulsed with the rhythm of her heartbeat. She was no longer entirely human, and she was not alone in her transformation. The bridge around her hummed with technology that would have been incomprehensible to the engineers who had designed the original Exodus ships. Crystalline interfaces grew directly from the walls like living coral, their surfaces alive with data streams that responded to thought as much as touch. The crew moved with fluid precision that bordered on telepathic coordination, their enhanced nervous systems allowing them to process information at superhuman speeds. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Zara Webb from her station at Tactical Analysis. Marcus Webb's daughter had grown into a striking young woman whose transformation was even more dramatic than the adults. Born on an alien world and raised in the void, she represented the first generation of true void-born humans. Her skin held a faint luminescence, and her eyes were pools of starlight that seemed to see beyond the visible spectrum. Long-range sensors are detecting gravitational anomalies in Sector 7. The patterns match ancient precursor signatures. Sarah nodded, her enhanced mind already processing the implications. The precursors were a mysterious civilization that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago, leaving behind only fragments of technology so advanced that most species considered them mythical. But humanity had found more than fragments in the Void Nebula. "Dr. Webb to the bridge," Sarah commanded, her voice carrying through the ship's neural communication network. Marcus Webb arrived moments later, his own transformation visible in the way he moved with an engineer's perfect understanding of three-dimensional space. His fingers had elongated slightly, the better to interface with the hybrid biomechanical systems that now powered their ships. "The sanctuary is responding to the anomaly," Marcus reported, consulting a datapad that seemed to flow like liquid in his hands. "The consciousness within is becoming more active." The sanctuary was humanity's greatest discovery in the Void Nebula, a massive precursor installation that had been dormant for eons until human presence awakened it. It was part space station, part living organism, and part something beyond current understanding. Within its crystalline halls, humanity had learned to merge their natural adaptability with precursor technology, creating something entirely new. "What is it telling us?" Sarah asked. Over the years, she had learned to communicate with the sanctuary's alien intelligence, though the process was more like sharing dreams than conventional conversation. Marcus closed his eyes, his enhanced nervous system connecting with the ship's communication array. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there 8 years ago. "Danger. Ancient enemy. Awakening beyond the galactic rim. The sanctuary shows images of darkness consuming stars, of creatures that feed on the life force of entire worlds." Zara looked up from her console, her luminous eyes wide with concern. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the galactic edge. Whatever's out there, it's moving this way." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on the bridge. In the years since the Exodus, humanity had evolved beyond their original physical and mental limitations. They had mastered technologies that made their old understanding of physics seem quaint. They had learned to thrive in an environment that should have killed them within days. But if the sanctuary was concerned, then they faced something truly dangerous. "Captain Nakamura to the bridge," Sarah ordered. Jin Nakamura arrived with the enhanced speed that all void-adapted humans possessed, his movements flowing like water over stone. He had been a simple mining engineer when the exodus began, but the void had awakened something in him that made him a natural military leader. "Captain, I need you to prepare the fleet for combat operations," Sarah said. "Unknown hostiles approaching from beyond the galactic rim." Nakamura's expression grew serious. The human fleet had never faced a real military threat in the Void Nebula, but they had spent years preparing for the possibility. Their ships were unlike anything in the known galaxy, powered by precursor energy cores and equipped with weapons that bent space-time itself. "How long do we have?" Nakamura asked. Zara consulted her enhanced perception, her consciousness extending through the sensor networks of dozens of ships. "Based on their current trajectory and speed, they'll reach the outer galactic rim in approximately 6 months. If they maintain their advance rate, they'll encounter the first inhabited systems in 8 months. Sarah felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. For 8 years, humanity had been content to remain in exile, building their new civilization in the spaces between stars. They had adapted, evolved, and transcended their original limitations, but now, the galaxy that had cast them out faced a threat that their comfortable civilizations could never handle. "The irony is almost poetic," Marcus observed quietly. "They exiled us to protect their established order. Now that order faces extinction, and we're the only ones who might be able to save it." Sarah moved to the main viewport, looking out at the swirling energies of the Void Nebula that had been their home for 8 years. In the distance, she could see other ships of the human fleet, each one a unique fusion of human engineering and precursor technology. 5,000 ships had entered the nebula. Now over 8,000 vessels moved through the cosmic storms, born from the construction facilities they had built using precursor techniques. "The question is whether we should save them," Zara said, her voice carrying the practical wisdom of the Voidborn. "They wanted us gone. They called us dangerous and disruptive. Maybe it's time for the galaxy to learn what real danger looks like." Sarah considered this. The young woman wasn't wrong. Humanity owed the Galactic Trade Council nothing but resentment. They had been cast out like criminals, forced to leave behind everything they had built. Many humans had died during the first terrible months in the void, before they learned to adapt to its harsh conditions. But as she watched the dance of energies outside the viewport, Sarah remembered something Elder Voss had said during that last council session. "When you cast stones into the abyss, you must be prepared for what the abyss casts back." Humanity had been cast into the abyss, and they had become something far more powerful than anyone had imagined. But they had also retained the essential qualities that made them human: compassion, determination, and the stubborn refusal to let others suffer when they had the power to help. "Dr. Webb," Sarah said finally, "I need you to analyze everything the Sanctuary has shown us about this approaching threat. Captain Nakamura, begin preparing our ships for a long-range deployment. And Zara, I need you to do something that's going to be very difficult." The young woman turned to face her, starlight eyes curious. "What do you need, Admiral?" "I need you to establish long-range communication with the Galactic Trade Council. It's time to let them know that humanity is still alive." Zara's expression showed surprise, then understanding. "You're going to warn them." "I'm going to save them," Sarah corrected, "whether they deserve it or not." The communication array that Zara assembled was a marvel of hybrid technology, using precursor quantum entanglement principles to transmit across impossible distances. When the signal reached the galactic core 3 days later, it would arrive as the first contact from humanity in 8 years. Sarah stood before the transmission device, knowing that her words would change everything. Behind her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for humanity's return to the galaxy that had rejected them. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Void Fleet," she began, her voice carrying across the vast distances between stars. 8 years ago, you exiled us from civilized space, calling us dangerous and disruptive. You were right about the dangerous part, but you were wrong about what we would be dangerous to." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "An ancient enemy approaches from beyond the galactic rim. Your conventional fleets will be useless against them. They consume life itself, turning entire worlds into lifeless husks. In 8 months, they will reach your outer colonies." The transmission continued, carrying both warning and ultimatum. "Humanity offers our assistance in defending the galaxy we were forced to leave. But understand this. We are not the same species you exiled. We have adapted, evolved, and transcended our original limitations. When we return, it will be on our terms." As the signal departed for the galactic core, Sarah felt a mixture of anticipation and grim satisfaction. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone, and they had gotten their wish, but they had also created something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The Void-born generation gathered around Zara, their luminous eyes reflecting the starlight of the nebula. They had never known the comfortable worlds of the galactic core, never experienced the false security of established civilization. They were children of the abyss, forged in cosmic fire and tempered by impossible hardships. "Are we really going to save them?" asked Marcus quietly. Sarah turned from the viewport, her silver-streaked hair catching the light of distant stars. "We're going to save the galaxy. Whether we save the civilizations that cast us out remains to be seen." In the depths of the sanctuary, ancient machinery hummed with increasing urgency. The precursor consciousness that dwelt within those crystalline halls had seen this threat before, in ages past when the galaxy was young. It knew what was coming, and it knew that only humanity, transformed by their exile into something beyond their original nature, had any hope of standing against it. The abyss had cast back its stones, and the galaxy was about to discover what 8 years in the darkness had created. The Reckoning. The emergency session of the Galactic Trade Council convened in chaos. Of the 12 species that had voted to exile humanity 8 years ago, only 7 still had functioning governments. The others had been consumed by the advancing shadow that swept across the galaxy's outer rim like a plague of living darkness. Ambassador Krelthok stood at the center of the crystalline chamber, but his proud bearing had been replaced by desperate fear. His reptilian features showed the strain of sleepless weeks coordinating a defense that was proving utterly inadequate. Around him, the remaining council members displayed various degrees of panic and despair. "The Celestial Dominion's home fleet was destroyed 6 hours ago," reported Representative Thana, her crystal voice cracking with grief. 17 billion souls gone in minutes. The entities didn't even slow down to consume the wreckage. Councillor Vex's gelatinous form had turned a sickly gray color. The Morphic Collective's border worlds report the same pattern. The creatures appear from nowhere, drain all life from planetary surfaces, then vanish back into the void. Our weapons have no effect on them. From his elevated position, Elder Voss observed the proceedings with the grim satisfaction of someone whose warnings had been ignored. The ancient Corvani had lived through 17 civilizations, and he recognized the signs of collapse when he saw them. "Perhaps," Elder Voss said into the desperate chatter, "it is time to consider the transmission we received 3 days ago." Krelthak's scales rippled with anger and humiliation. "You want us to beg for help from the species we exiled? From primitives who should have died in the Void Nebula years ago?" "Those primitives," Elder Voss replied calmly, "are the only ones offering assistance. And given our current situation, pride seems like a luxury we can no longer afford." The holographic display in the chamber's center activated, showing Admiral Sarah Chen's transmission for the 10th time since its arrival. But this time, the council members actually listened to her words instead of dismissing them out of hand. 8 months, Representative Quill clicked nervously. She said, 8 months until they reach our core systems. How could she possibly know that? The same way she knew about the threat in the first place, Elder Voss observed. The humans found something in the Void Nebula, something that allowed them to survive where survival should have been impossible. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed the crystalline walls in pulsing red as automated systems announced the approach of unidentified vessels. "Incoming fleet," shouted a technician. "Massive energy signatures, unknown configuration. They're dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge." Krelthak rushed to the tactical display, his enhanced vision processing the sensor data faster than the computers could translate it. What he saw there made his blood run cold with a mixture of terror and awe. 8,000 ships materialized at the edge of the system, but they bore no resemblance to the desperate refugee fleet that had departed 8 years ago. These vessels seemed to have been grown rather than built, their hulls flowing with organic curves that pulsed with internal light. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single vast intelligence. "By the ancient laws," whispered Councillor Vex, "what have they become?" The answer came in the form of a communication request that bypassed all security protocols and appeared directly on the chamber's main display. Admiral Sarah Chen materialized in holographic form, but the woman who stood before them was no longer entirely human. Her hair moved with its own inner light, and her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire starfields. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond normal hearing. Most disturbing of all, she seemed to be aware of each council member individually, her gaze moving between them with uncomfortable precision. "Honored representatives," Sarah said, her tone carrying polite formality that somehow managed to convey absolute authority. "We received your distress signals. 8 years ago, you declared humanity unfit for civilized society. Today we return to demonstrate what civilization actually means. Krelthak found his voice, though it came out as more of a croak. Admiral Chen, that is, the Council acknowledges that circumstances have changed. If humanity is willing to assist in our current crisis, we would be grateful for any aid you could provide. Sarah's smile held no warmth. Grateful. An interesting choice of words from the species that condemned 4.2 million of my people to death in the void. We didn't know, Thana interjected desperately. We thought the outer rim was empty. We had no idea about the Shadow Maw. The Shadow Maw, Sarah repeated, and somehow the council members knew she was consulting vast databases of information in real time. Yes, that's what you're calling them. Ancient entities that feed on life force itself. The precursors faced them once before, millions of years ago. Elder Voss leaned forward with interest. The precursors? The mythical civilization? Not mythical, Sarah replied. Very real and very dead. The Shadow Maw consumed them as they're consuming you now, but before they died, the precursors left behind a gift for anyone capable of understanding it. The holographic display shifted to show the human fleet in more detail. The ships weren't just vessels anymore. They were living entities that combined organic growth with crystalline technology in ways that defied conventional understanding. We found their sanctuary in the Void Nebula, Sarah continued. We learned from their knowledge, merged with their technology, and evolved beyond our original limitations. The radiation that should have killed us instead transformed us into something the Shadow Maw cannot easily consume. Krelthak's diplomatic training finally kicked in, allowing him to function despite his fear. What are your terms for assistance? Sarah's expression grew cold. Terms? You think this is a negotiation? Let me be clear about the situation. Your combined fleets represent perhaps 50,000 ships. The Shadow Maw have consumed 3 entire galactic arms and number in the millions. Without our intervention, your civilizations will be extinct within months. She gestured, and the display showed tactical projections that made several council members physically recoil. We don't need your permission to act. We don't require your cooperation. We're not here to bargain with the species that cast us out. Then why are you here? Elder Voss asked quietly. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because despite everything you did to us, we're still human. And humans don't abandon people to monsters, even when those people deserve abandonment. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Outside the crystalline walls, the human fleet hung in space like a constellation of living stars, waiting for orders from their transformed admiral. The Shadow Maw Vanguard will reach this system in 4 hours, Sarah announced. Your defense fleets will be destroyed in the first 10 minutes of contact. We will handle the actual fighting. Your job is to evacuate civilian populations and coordinate refugee movements. Captain Jin Nakamura's image appeared beside Sarah's, his own transformation evident in the way space seemed to bend slightly around him. Admiral, the Voidborn Tactical Corps reports ready for deployment. Zara's coordinating with the Sanctuary for optimal strike patterns. Sarah nodded. Begin the operation. Show them what exile created. The human fleet moved with liquid grace, their ships flowing through space like schools of luminous fish. As they approached the system's outer edge, reality itself seemed to ripple around them, the exotic technologies they had mastered bending the laws of physics to their will. The Shadow Maw emerged from hyperspace as living nightmares, creatures of dark energy and crystallized hunger that existed partially outside normal dimensions. They had consumed entire galaxies in ages past, and their approach turned nearby space into a zone of death where stars dimmed and planets withered. But they had never faced humans transformed by 8 years in the cosmic crucible of the Void Nebula. Zara Webb stood at the center of the human battle network, her consciousness expanded across 8,000 ships simultaneously. The Void-born generation moved as extensions of her will, their enhanced minds processing combat data at superhuman speeds. The first exchange of fire lit up the star system like a newborn sun. Shadow Maw weapons that had shattered conventional fleets struck human shields that bent space-time itself, dispersing impossible energies harmlessly into higher dimensions. In response, human weapons channeled the primal forces of creation itself, tearing holes in reality that consumed the nightmare entities wholesale. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Shadow Maw Vanguard had been completely destroyed. Their dark energy dispersed back into the cosmic background from which they had emerged. Not a single human ship had been lost. In the aftermath, as the human fleet regrouped grouped around the system's star, Admiral Sarah Chen opened a final transmission to the Galactic Trade Council. "The immediate threat has been neutralized," she announced. "The main Shadow Maw force will require more comprehensive action. We will handle that as well." Krelthax stared at the displays showing the complete destruction of an enemy that had devastated half the galaxy. "Admiral, how can we possibly repay this debt?" Sarah's laugh held no humor. "You can't, but you can remember what happened here. You cast humanity into the darkness because you feared what we might become. Well, now you know. We became your salvation." She paused, her transformed features showing an expression of profound weariness. "The galaxy will be safe from the Shadow Maw, but it will never be the same. The old order that you fought so hard to preserve died the moment you chose fear over wisdom." The transmission ended, leaving the council members alone with the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had exiled humanity to preserve their comfortable civilization, and in doing so, they had created the only force capable of saving that civilization from extinction. Elder Voss stood slowly, his ancient features showing something that might have been satisfaction. "I warned you," he said to the chamber. "I told you that casting stones into the abyss would have consequences. Now you know what those consequences look like." Outside the crystalline chamber, the human fleet prepared for the long campaign ahead. They would pursue the Shadow Maw to the edge of known space and beyond, protecting a galaxy that had rejected them, not because they owed anything to the species that had cast them out, but because protecting others was what humans did. The abyss had indeed cast back its stones, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the end, the Galactic Trade Council learned the truth that Elder Voss had tried to teach them 8 years too late. When you force someone into the darkness, you must be prepared for what the darkness makes them become. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the darkness makes them into exactly what you need them to be.